Some truths don't echo through history. They burn through your blood. Long before laws, long before scriptures, there was a voice. Sovereign, ancient, and female. It didn't ask to be heard. It simply existed. But when it refused to kneel, the world called it dangerous. And so began the silencing of Lilith's prophecy. Yet prophecy doesn't die. It waits. In dreams. In cycles. In that quiet rebellion you've carried since birth. Lilith was never a shadow. She was the flame before the doctrine. And now, as the world fractures under its own weight, her message rises again, this time through the pulse of the Dragon Queen Reawakening. These queens weren't born from lineage or legacy. They emerged from fire, symbols of a power we were taught to fear, not embody. But the fire is back. It speaks through the women who reclaim their bodies, their boundaries, their birthright, and through the men brave enough to meet the sacred feminine without trying to tame her. You didn't find this video by accident. Maybe your soul knew this story before your mind ever caught up. Maybe the prophecy lives in you, waiting for this exact moment to awaken. You've probably heard whispers about her, maybe in stories that called her a demon, or in books that barely mention her name. But Lilith was never a footnote. She was the flame before the candle, the breath before the word, the first spark of feminine freedom, long before obedience was mistaken for holiness. They said she left Adam, but she didn't leave. She rose. She stood eye to eye with him and whispered a truth the world wasn't ready to hear. We are equals. And when that truth was denied, she chose exile over erasure. That wasn't rebellion. That was remembrance, ancient remembrance, and of a soul that would not shrink just to be accepted. She didn't ask for a throne or applause, only a sky wide enough to spread her wings. Lilith is not a story to be explained. She's a frequency, one that hums beneath the skin of those who are told to sit down, be nice, smile more. She lives in the quiet defiance of those who walk away from golden cages, in the heartbeat of the woman who says no without needing to explain, in the man who chooses integrity over approval, in the artist who burns the contract and paints what no one wants to see. Her path is not easy. It never was. Those who carry her code are rarely celebrated by the world. They are questioned, feared, misnamed. But in the shadows they find each other, and in the silence they find themselves. Maybe you've felt it in that pull, that holy discontent, that whisper inside that says, this isn't it, this isn't all. That's her, not as a myth, not as a goddess on a pedestal, but as an echo in your bones. She doesn't come with rules or rituals. She comes when you choose truth over tradition, when you set a boundary and don't apologize, when you remember your voice after years of swallowing it. That moment you realize you don't have to be chosen to be worthy. You already are. That's Lilith rising through you like a tide that no longer asks permission to reach the shore. You don't have to burn your life down to honor her, but you might have to light a match. Start where you are. Say no when you mean no. Say yes only when your whole body agrees. Let discomfort teach you where you've abandoned yourself. Write the things you're afraid to say out loud. Stand in the mirror and say your own name until it sounds like a prayer. Read words that feel like thunder in your chest. Women who run with the wolves, untamed. Listen to music that makes your spine remember it was once a serpent. Let yourself be moved, undone, remade. In a world that rewards performance and punishes presence, Lilith is dangerous. Not because she destroys, but because she awakens. She reminds you that wholeness doesn't require permission, that you are not too much, that your edge is not a flaw, it's a doorway. She doesn't want followers, she wants mirrors. And if you're still listening, if your heart hasn't turned away, then maybe you've already felt her stir, in the place where you refuse to shrink, in the part of you that would rather be alone than fake, in the silence between choices, where your truth waits, barefoot and patient. And the moment you say yes to that truth, not just once, but again and again, something opens, a veil, a memory, a current beneath the current. And suddenly you're not walking alone, you're walking with every soul who ever chose the path that didn't make sense on paper, but made all the sense in the stars. Lilith doesn't promise comfort, she promises remembrance of who you were before they told you who to be, of what freedom feels like before it was traded for fitting in, of the first breath your soul took before it forgot it had wings. So, Stay with me. There's more. Because Lilith's story is not the end. It's the gate. And beyond that gate, someone else is waiting. Someone whose exile is bound to hers. Someone whose voice, like yours, has waited lifetimes to be heard. But for now, let the silence speak. Let the ache breathe. Let Lilith sit beside you in the dark, not to save you, but to remind you that you were never broken, just wild and wildly whole. Most people think exile is an end, a punishment, a silence, a falling away. But what if exile is not an end at all? What if it's the sacred pause before the remembering begins? Lilith didn't vanish into the shadows defeated. She descended there, deliberately, like a root knowing where the water lives. She didn't escape. She embedded herself into the spaces no scripture could touch, and ever since that echo has been rippling quietly beneath the noise of the world, waiting for those with ears not just to hear, but to remember. Think about that. What if every moment you were silenced, unseen, or cast aside was not a collapse, but a code? Not weakness, but initiation. Her prophecy wasn't spoken aloud. It wasn't carved in stone or sung in temples. It was hidden in the margins, in the things that don't make logical sense but stir something ancient in your blood. You know those moments, when you hear a melody and suddenly feel like you're falling into a memory that isn't yours, or dream of symbols you've never studied, but wake up crying anyway. That's the language of her exile. Not linear, not obvious, but potent, sensory, embedded in the bones, not the books. Her truth lives between what was allowed to be said and what still trembles just behind your breath. This is why you've always felt that itch beneath the surface. That invisible tug when someone repeats a story you're supposed to believe, but something in you clenches. You don't know why. You just know it doesn't fit. That's her. That's you remembering. Her exile wasn't just hers. It was collective, a forgetting that stretched across time, turning wild wisdom into myth, turning sovereign women into shadows. And yet, the prophecy survived. Not because it was protected, but because it was felt. In dreams, in art, in primal knowing. In the child who refuses to obey, not out of defiance, but because her soul remembers freedom. You want to hear that prophecy again? Sit still, light a candle, close your eyes and breathe like your breath is a bridge, not to something new, but to something ancient. Play music that feels older than language. Let your emotions move without trying to explain them. Notice what rises when you stop performing, when you're raw, when the mask slides off and the ache is all that's left. Ask yourself, what have I always known but was too afraid to say? That question is a key. It doesn't unlock a door. It dissolves the illusion that there was a door at all. Because the knowing was never locked away. It was layered, covered, muted, but never destroyed. And that's the sacred irony, isn't it? That those sent to the edges, the ones silenced, demonized, erased, are often the carriers of the real gospel. Not the gospel of obedience, but of origin. Lilith's prophecy was never about vengeance. It was about reclamation, of voice, of memory, of the part of you that was told to sit down when it wanted to rise. And now, as more souls begin to feel that subterranean pull, as more begin to whisper what they were once punished for knowing, something ancient is stirring, a current, a collective exhale, as if the earth herself is remembering the names that were buried and the truths that were cloaked in metaphor to survive. Because Lilith was never alone. Her story was one of many that the world tried to unwrite and failed. There were others, guardians, midwives of awakening, carriers of fire and language and codes that were never meant for temples, but for the trembling space between heartbeats. You don't need to find them, they're already with you, in your triggers, in your longings, in the way you flinch at certain lies and soften toward certain wounds. Her exile was a map, not to escape the world, but to awaken within it. And as that map unfolds in your hands, you might begin to see something you've always known, quietly waiting beneath the noise, that you were part of the prophecy all along. Not all queens wear crowns. Some carry scales beneath their skin, wings folded in their backbones, and fire that remembers its name. The dragon queens are not myths we made up. They are memories we've tried to forget. Echoes of a time when feminine power was not ornamental or submissive, but sovereign, wild, and sacred. They come from the age before shame was wrapped around the body, before the serpent was cast as evil, before the womb was reduced to biology. They are not returning, and they are reawakening. And they do not come from above, they rise from within. You've felt them, haven't you? In the way your skin responds to thunder. In the dreams where wings unfold from your shoulders, even if your waking mind can't explain why. In the shiver that moves through you when someone speaks a truth that has no name. The dragon queens don't ask for permission. They appear in the moment a woman finally says, "I am done dimming my flame." In the man who cries without knowing the reason, but feels more real than ever. In the dancer whose body tells stories no one taught her. They move through those who no longer fit inside their old names, their old roles, their old fears. And their language? It's not spoken. It's felt. It moves like heat rising through your spine. The ancient serpent path, Kundalini coiled and waiting, not as a concept but as a living pulse. The call of the dragon queens doesn't come through logic. It comes through sensation, a flutter in your belly when you hear something that feels both new and strangely familiar. A wave of warmth in your chest that makes your breath pause, goosebumps when no wind is blowing. These are not random. They are activations. When that happens, don't brush it off. Don't explain it away. Pause. Feel. Let it land. That is memory knocking. Not a memory from this life, but from before. Want to meet them in your own body? Start with movement. Not the kind you've learned, but the kind your bones remember. Turn off the lights. Let the music speak. Move without shape or form, like a creature rediscovering its instincts. Or try breath work, focusing on the base of your spine, the womb, the sacral waters. Breathe as if your breath could melt stone. Ritual baths with herbs like mugwort, rosemary, or lavender can also unlock inner doorways. The goal isn't to perform, it's to presence. To be so fully in your body that the veil between you and what you were taught to forget begins to dissolve. And when that veil lifts, the dragon queens do not feel foreign, they feel like you. Because the fire they carry, it's the same fire you've spent years trying to tame, the one that made you too intense, too sensitive, too much. But that fire doesn't want to destroy, it wants to reveal. It wants to light up every place you were told to stay small, every corner where truth was buried to keep the peace. The dragon queens rise not to burn the world down, but to burn down the lies you built around your soul. That kind of fire is threatening, not because it harms, but because it awakens. And systems built on sleep do not welcome those who are beginning to see. Once that flame catches, you won't go back. You can't. Your spine won't bend the way it used to. Your eyes will seek symbols in the ordinary. Your breath will become a prayer. And your body, this body you were taught to judge or fix, becomes your sacred scroll. Every scar, every curve, every tremble is part of the scripture. Flesh becomes myth, bone becomes altar, and you begin to walk not as a person trying to find her way, but as a queen remembering she never left the throne. So if you feel the fire flicker in your belly, if you hear the rustle of wings in your dreams, if the serpent stirs at the base of your spine, stay with it. Don't rush. Don't analyze. Let it unfold. The dragon queens are not here to be worshipped. They are here to awaken the dragon in you. You don't have to travel to ancient ruins to find sacred texts. You are one. The body is the original scripture, etched not in ink, but in sensation, pulse and breath. Every scar is a glyph, every shiver, a verse. Every ache you've learned to ignore might just be a chapter waiting to be read. This flesh isn't flawed, it's encrypted. The strange part? You're both the manuscript and the translator. And no, there is no manual, only memory, only the slow return to an inner language the world tried to silence. You weren't meant to understand it with your mind. You were meant to remember it with your presence. The belly tells stories no scholar could footnote. The womb holds archives, not of facts, but of feeling. For women, it hums with the voices of mothers who birthed in silence, bled without witnesses, wept prayers into soil no one blessed. For men, the gut is where truth goes when emotion isn't allowed. It tightens, flutters, goes hollow. It doesn't ask for logic. It asks for listening, that heaviness in your core. It might not be stress. It might be the echo of an ancestor denied their voice, or a vow made long ago that your soul is finally ready to break. This isn't indigestion, it's initiation. And then there's the spine, your living scroll, the serpent path, each vertebra a syllable, each curve a verse. Why do you think grief slumps the shoulders? or why joy straightens your stance like a prayer. Because the body doesn't just hold memory, it speaks it. Lilith, the forgotten one, murmurs from the depths of the womb. The dragon queens rise like fire through the spinal gates. Together, they inscribe a sacred poem of becoming, not through doctrine, but through tension, breath, sensation. You are not separate from the myth. You are how it survives. So how do you begin to read this sealed book? With stillness, the kind of stillness that feels like surrender. Sit. Close your eyes. Let your awareness travel like a soft flame from your crown to your toes. Don't try to change anything. Just witness. What pulses? What's numb? Where does the breath get stuck? That space between noticing and naming, that's where the sacred lives. You don't need incense. You need honesty. And maybe, if you feel called, explore somatic therapy or trauma-informed yoga. Not as healing trends, but as doorways. Not to fix you, but to reintroduce you to yourself. Awakening doesn't always come with lightning bolts. Sometimes it arrives as a tight jaw or a throat that swells every time you speak truth. Sometimes it's in the fatigue that comes after pretending all day, or the mysterious tears that rise when no one's hurt you, but something deeper finally feels seen. The body speaks when the soul gets tired of waiting. So ask gently, what is my body trying to tell me that my mind is too afraid to hear? That question is a skeleton key, and the door it opens is not outside you. It's in your fascia, your breath, your spine. And when you listen, really listen, you begin to realize this story isn't just yours. That tension in your hips, it might belong to your grandmother. That fear in your throat, it might be a forgotten priestess who once chose silence to survive. The more you open, the more you see. You are a vessel for the archetypal, the ancestral, the untold. And in decoding yourself, you liberate more than your own timeline. You free the ones who whispered through blood and bone, "Remember us." This is why the exile was never exile. It was preservation. It was protection. It was the sacred tucked deep in the flesh, waiting for you to return and read. Exile feels like a curse until you see it as alchemy. Lilith's banishment forged her into something more than myth. She became a living transmutation of pain into power. Imagine taking your own wounds and letting them catalyze your growth, like turning lead into gold, but on a spiritual level. It's not easy, but it's possible. Every inner rebellion is a step in the crucible. That crucible isn't abstract. Think of moments you faced rejection, maybe a job you didn't get or a friendship that fell apart. Those aren't setbacks. They're furnaces that refine your true self. Next time disappointment hits, imagine it as fire touching your edges, burning away the brittle parts until only your core remains. That's spiritual metallurgy at its finest. Practical alchemy means naming your shadows. Grab a journal and write down emotions you've labeled bad: anger, shame, envy. Sit with each one without judgment. Then ask, what wisdom does this emotion hold? You might find that anger points to violated boundaries, or shame highlights unmet values. Those insights are the philosopher's stone, tools for transformation. Lilith's prophecy wasn't about revenge, but about remembering your sacred flame. She didn't seek to destroy Eden. She sought to reclaim her origin. In your life, that might look like reclaiming hobbies you abandoned or speaking truths you've silenced. Maybe you start painting again, or voice a bold idea at work. These small rebellions are the sparks that reignite your soul's furnace. As that inner fire grows, it radiates outward. Relationships shift, some deepen, others fall away. That's not loss, it's clarity. You begin to attract people who resonate with your frequency instead of clinging to familiarity. It's like tuning an instrument. Once you're in harmony, discordant notes naturally fade, and a new melody emerges. And in that melody, you discover something profound. Transfiguration isn't a destination. It's a resonance, an ongoing song between exile and home, shadow and light. It's the very vibration that calls you to the next stage, where prophecy becomes living story. No one's coming to hand you a crown, and that's the beauty of it. Sovereignty doesn't arrive through approval or permission. It begins in a quiet decision. I belong to myself. Lilith doesn't need temples. She rises in the woman who stops apologizing for being whole, and the dragon queens. They return not through prophecy, but through presence. Your presence. The shift isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it looks like choosing solitude over noise, like walking away from roles that never fit, and finally embracing the truth that your intuition was never wrong. It's in those subtle moments when you stop explaining yourself, when you realize no one needs to get it. It just needs to feel real inside your bones. You want to live this sovereignty? Start by honoring your inner yes and your sacred no. Not every invitation is aligned. Not every path is yours to walk. A simple practice. Each morning, ask yourself, what part of me wants to lead today? Is it the nurturer, the seer, the wild one? Let her speak. Let her guide. And don't second-guess her wisdom. This isn't about fighting the old. It's about embodying the new. The true feminine doesn't shout to be seen. She radiates. Think of the moon. She doesn't compete with the sun. She reflects her own mystery. Your path doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It just needs to be rooted. And when it's rooted, even your silence becomes a revolution. The collective is shifting. Can you feel it? More and more women and men honoring their inner feminine are waking up with a sense that they're here for something sacred, not to perform, but to remember. This is not rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's return. Return to essence, to wisdom, to a rhythm older than time itself. And in that return, the prophecy unfolds not in thunder, but in breath, not in spectacle, but in stillness. You start to notice the way you walk changes, the way you speak, the way you listen to your body's truth without needing proof. And just beneath the surface, a name begins to stir, one you've carried all along. So now you know. Lilith wasn't a myth to fear. She was a memory waiting to be felt. And those dragon queens, they've never really left. They've just been waiting for someone with the courage to remember. But what will you do with that remembrance? Will you keep living on autopilot, shrinking your truth just to fit in? Or will you finally trust that inner pulse, the one that's been calling you back to yourself, over and over again? What part of you still believes you need permission to be whole? And what would happen if starting today you stopped asking? Because this isn't just information, it's initiation, and it only works if you walk it. If something stirred inside you today as even a whisper, honor it. Leave a comment and tell me what you remembered. Subscribe, like, share this with another soul who needs to hear it. And most of all, stay with this journey, because it's only just begun. To understand more about subjects related to cosmic rays, esotericism, theosophy and advanced spirituality, and access knowledge little known by the general public, access the link in the first pinned comment and discover the ebook, What Are Cosmic Rays, written by Bathajal.